Chris Bob, my friends, I hope this finds you well. And so here we are at Candlemas. Welcome to Candlemas. This festival is also known as the Presentation of Christ. So what we commemorate here really is, in Jewish tradition, when a child reached a certain age or a baby was at a certain point, they would be brought into the temple and dedicated to God. We have similar things now in the Christian church. We can have dedication services. So they do still exist, just with our own spin on them. And this, of course, the Presentation of Christ, it celebrates the moment that Mary and Joseph bring Jesus into the temple, the infant Jesus. And the name Candlemas, one of the reasons why we use it, it comes from the tradition of blessing candles during the service, highlighting that Jesus is indeed the light of the world. And there's also a secondary thing behind that. It's a way of banishing the darkness because, of course, the days are starting to get lighter. The weather is starting to get slightly better. I say that, living in a floodplain, I think. Now, I'm one of these odd people that actually really do quite like the dark nights. I like the winter months. And I totally understand if it's not your bag. There are people, of course, out there who... they get seasonal affective disorder, or SAD is the acronym, which is, well, unfortunate. But it's a very real thing. One of the volunteers at one of the food banks I work in, she very much has seasonal affective disorder, and the winter months are hard for her. So I totally sympathise and I totally get it. So if you're one of those people that's celebrating the nights getting lighter, he says, put his teeth back in. Amen. Well done. Great to you. Me, I'm not a big fan of it still being light outside at 9:30 at night. But anyway, back to the gospel. So in the gospel reading today, we meet Simeon and Anna. Now, they might be names that you already know. Simeon is described as being righteous and devout. He's also waiting to meet the Messiah. You see, Simeon has got a very special promise from God. God has promised Simeon that he will not die until he meets the Messiah, until he meets the Christ. That's a big deal. Of course, poor Simeon, he doesn't know if that's going to be in 10 minutes. He doesn't know if it's going to be in 100 years. He doesn't know. And so, of course, when he finally holds the infant Jesus in his arms, his heart overflows with praise. He proclaims that Jesus is the light for revelation to the Gentiles and to the glory of Israel. That might sound familiar. We use the song of Simeon in some of our services, i.e. morning and evening prayer. We do tend to use the words of Simeon, the song of Simeon as it's called. We also use it in funerals. There's a section in the funerals liturgy which I carry around with me when I'm doing a funeral, that actually has in there, Lord, lettest thou servant depart in peace, for mine eyes have seen the light of the world to the Gentiles. Simeon, in this instance, he represents all who have longed for the coming of the Messiah. Now remember, we said before, didn't we, around Christmas, that the world at this point was very dark, it was very brutal. People that still clung to God were crying out for a Messiah. Simeon is holding the Messiah. Simeon is holding the infant Christ in his hands. What an amazing thing that must have been for him. And Simeon's declaration, it highlights the universality of Christ's mission. A big word that was, wasn't it? Let's be fair. But it highlights that. It highlights that Jesus is not just the Saviour of Israel, but he is the light of the world. He's the one who's going to bring the knowledge of God and the true pattern of living to all people, because humans had absolutely gotten it wrong up to this point. Simeon recognizes that the child is the fulfillment of all of his hopes, all of his dreams. His lifelong mission is Christ. There he is. And we too are called to recognize Christ in our midst. We too are called to see the light that he brings to our own lives. We too are called then to carry that light out into the world. And how often do we, like Simeon, wait in hope? How often do we wait in expectation for God's promises to unfold in our lives? How often does it feel that we've been waiting just a wee bit too long? Maybe we've prayed for something and it's absolutely taking its time. I'll tell you a story, friends. Story time with me. You love it, don't you? Story time. I had my first two children fairly close to each other. I think there's only about 4 years, 3-4 years between them. There's not much. Then myself and Mrs. Vicar, we prayed for a third. We decided we wanted a third one. And we prayed. And we prayed. And we waited. 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 And we waited a very long time. Eventually, we were blessed with our third, but only after I had begun training for ministry, only after the church had put us in a house that was big enough for all of us to live comfortably in. Only after had I actually finished the journey of discernment into a calling of ministry and then began a new journey of ministry. Only then were we given that third child. Only then was that promise answered. Only then was that prayer answered. You see, friends, Simeon's patience and his trust remind us that God's timing is perfect. Even when we feel like we've been waiting a bit too long. And when our prayers are answered, how often do we stop, look back and think, actually, you know what? God was right. And we humans, we don't like admitting that we were wrong, but I think in those instances we have to. I look back and I look at the birth of third and I think, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. It would not have worked if we'd have had third when we initially wanted to. I think that wait absolutely helped. And then we meet Anna, a prophetess. Her story is brief, but powerful. So Simeon and Anna are two people in the temple that Mary and Joseph meet. Anna is described as an elderly widow. She never leaves the temple. She is always there. She worships and she fasts and she prays day and night. She is the embodiment of devotion. She truly is. And when Anna sees Jesus, she knows him straight away. She recognizes him straight away. Simeon had to have the promise that you will not die until you see the Christ. Anna just recognized him. I'm not comparing the two, but what I'm saying is Anna knew. And she recognizes Christ straight away. And she gives thanks to God. And she speaks about this child who everyone is looking to be the redemption of Jerusalem. They just don't know it yet. Remember, they were expecting David on flaming horse with sword. And here Anna, she sees the truth. She sees the light. And Anna's response is one of unceasing gratitude. It's a response of proclamation. She has been waiting her whole life for the coming of the Messiah. Now she can't help but share that joy of encountering him with others. And like Anna, my friends, we are called to share the good news of Jesus' coming. We're called to share the good news of his light in the darkness with all around us. And I've said it before, we're not dull. We know the way it's going to go. Some will listen to us, some will not. That's not for us to decide. And all too often, many of us will read this gospel and we will focus on Simeon, which is right and proper. And sometimes I found in the past, especially when I was a child, listening to this at church, that Anna, she'd kind of get lost in the shuffle a wee bit. But Anna's willingness to share that story of Christ, to share him, it echoes that of Mary Magdalene. Remember at the tomb at Easter, we'll get to these later on in the year, but at the tomb, when Mary sees the risen Jesus for the first time, what does she do? First thing she does, tell everybody, I've seen the Lord. Anna's devotion also teaches us that faith is not about waiting passively. It's not about sitting here calm as a Hindu cow, to quote Fight Club, just waiting for something to happen. We have to be active in our faith. Anna actively seeks God in every moment she has. Her life of prayer and of worship is an absolute reminder that we are to keep our eyes open for God's presence, to keep our hearts ready to recognize the work happening in our lives, to recognize the promises being fulfilled all around us every single day. Remember, we hear this so often in the letters of St. Paul. Jesus himself teaches this in the gospel, that we are to remain vigilant, that we can never, ever, ever fall asleep at the switch, as it were, because we do not know the moment the Master will return. I think that's the way the gospel puts it. And then of both Simeon and Anna, they see Jesus as the light of the world. They see that light shining in the darkness. Simeon says, "Mine eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations." Jesus, even though he's but a child in this scene, is already a light that will guide his people to salvation. And the temple in Jewish tradition is seen as being the place where God dwelled with his people. And it's now become a place where true light of the world is revealed in Jesus Christ. This light, it's both personal and it's universal. You see, for Simeon, it's the fulfillment of his own long-held, lifelong hopes. For Anna, it's the culmination of a lifetime of prayer and devotion. It's many things for each and every one of us, this light that appears, this light in the world. Many of us will have differences in the way that light has helped us. But one thing that unites each and every one of us is this. It's a light that cuts through the darkness of the world, bringing healing, hope, and salvation to all who see it. And so, my friends, as we gather to celebrate Candlemas today, in remembrance of Jesus' presentation, we are invited to reflect on how his light shines in our lives. Small thing really, isn't it? Where is the darkness in our lives? And we've all got it. None of us are special in that respect. We all carry it. How can the light of Christ penetrate that darkness? How can we, like Simeon and Anna, carry that light of Christ out into the world? The Feast of the Presentation reminds us that Jesus is the light for revelation, that Jesus is for the Gentiles and for all of Israel. It's for each of us. Remember, universal. And his light is not just for a select few. That light is for each and every one of us. There are no barriers. There is nothing that can keep us from that light other than what we put in the way ourselves. Remember, I've said it before, we tell ourselves a certain narrative, don't we? I'm not good enough. I'm too broken. I've done this in the past. I've done that in the past. And we put these barriers in the way that stop us receiving that light of Christ. And so, my friends, to bring this into land, to wind this up, today we remember a very pivotal moment in the temple. We're reminded of the profound impact that Jesus had on both Simeon and Anna, and indeed on us, as individuals and as community. Each of us will carry promises that God has fulfilled to us. Each of us will carry prayers that we are still waiting to have answered. Let us, my friends, like Simeon and like Anna, wait in hope and in faith for the fulfillment of these promises. Let's wait for answers for those prayers. Let us recognize the light of Christ in our midst, and let that light shine in our lives, guiding us and those whom we meet towards the hope, towards the love, towards the salvation that is found in Jesus Christ. And so, my friends, that brings us to the end of our reflection together today. I hope it helped a little bit, and I hope it's cleared up a little bit what Candlemas might actually be. And believe it or not, I've had an email. Hurrah! So again, the address down here, it does work. Shockingly, I know. But I have had an email, and it's a question from someone known as Jay, which is fine. I don't mind people using pseudonyms, just no swear words, okay? I can't read that out. So someone called Jay has said to me, Viking Vicar, I see every now and again that you wear wrestling t-shirts. I gotta ask, who is your favourite? You've caught me, Jay. I mean, I've got one on today, Rowdy Roddy Piper. I'm a big fan of old school wrestling, so you're sort of looking sort of late 80s right through the 90s, possibly the early 2000s. My favourite wrestler of all time, gosh, I've got so many. If I had to pick one wrestler that was my favourite, I would say Sting. So years ago, when he had the bleach blonde hair and the face paint, I absolutely loved that. Surfer Sting, and then of course he evolved and became the Crow Sting, and the Vigilante, and then he went on to TNA and became a Joker. It became the Joker Sting, but yeah, Sting has always been my absolute favourite. So thanks for the question, Jay. I really appreciate that, mate. And so, guys, the email address, it's open. Please do ask me questions, and Jay, I hope this has helped. And everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in and joining me again. I understand this is a bit of a whopper in terms of videos. One final thing, friends, if I could ask for a little bit of prayer. I've damaged my good foot. Now, some of you may know I have a foot that's permanently bad. I think I may have already done a story about it, a video. If I haven't, remind me via the email address and I'll tell you all about it. But anyway, my good foot, which is my right foot, I damaged it on the soft ground outside last week at some point. I'm all right. It's not terrible. I can still move around on it. It is just a wee bit painful while the soft tissue heals. So friends, if I could just ask for a bit of prayer just for that healing, that would be great. Thank you so much. With that being said, my brothers and sisters, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. 10 points if you can tell me what movie that comes from. Anyway, look after yourselves, my friends, and of course each other. God bless you, and take care.